Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is hosted by AICEP organization, and we're here with a panel of experts and fellow college counselors to talk about the American Institute of Certified Educational Planners, CEP, Certified Educational Professional Assessment. So I want to welcome you and welcome our panelists that are here today to talk about this very important program. So with me today, I have Stephen R. Antonoff, PhD, Certified Educational Planner. He is also the founder of the AICEP and one of the pioneers in our profession. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
We also have Stacy Kunitz, who has had masters as well, and she is a certified educational planner. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you.
And my name is Cindy McDonald. I have a master's and a PPS, which is a Pupil Personnel Services credential in the state of California. And our last panelist is Rachel Sobel, Dr. Sobel, and she is also a CEP. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you.
So, am I ready? That's the question that we're all asking ourselves. I know I'm asking myself, because you'll notice my name does not have that CEP at the end, but it will, because all of these panelists have encouraged me, just like we're encouraging you, to become a certified educational planner. And what we're going to talk about today is, am I ready? So, we had a previous webinar that many of you probably attended, and it was what you need to know about becoming a certified educational planner. So after today's webinar, if you did not see that webinar, please join us by going to the website, and you can watch the recording of that webinar to learn more about what it takes, why it's important, and we also have interviews of people who were working and thinking about, should I become a certified educational planner, what their thoughts were, and I bet you'll identify with some of their thoughts and some of the hesitations they might have had. So that'll be an important webinar for you to take in if you haven't done that already. So how does this all start? What is the process? One of the first things you want to do, and this is why we have the commission, is have an initial call with a member of the assessment committee. We have a large assessment committee spread out all over the United States, and it only takes one call. And Anne is also our administrative assistant. She's on our call today, on our webinar today, and a lot of times she'll be taking that initial call. So it all starts with just that one phone call, which is very easy to do, and it gives you an opportunity to start down that road to becoming a certified educational planner. But what else does it take? That's what we're here to talk about today. So there are two parts to the institutional knowledge. Two parts to the assessment: institutional knowledge and professional knowledge. And now I'm going to turn this over to the next panelist to tell you about what that institutional knowledge and professional knowledge is.
Thanks, Cindy. This is Rachel Sobel speaking. As we move through the institutional and professional knowledge information, we want you to know that this is not one specific answer from any one evaluation, but rather a composite of answers to the questions that are on the institutional knowledge part of the assessment and the professional knowledge part. The first question that is asked, I believe that we're having some technical difficulties. Okay. The first question on the institutional knowledge part, next slide please, is what type of student might be happy and best served at the college or university? And let me just back up one moment and say that when you submit your application to become a CEP, On it, you have listed 30 colleges with which you are most familiar and most comfortable. The assessment committee of AICEP will choose 4 colleges for you to know about, and you will be writing about only 2 of those 4. So we choose 4 colleges from your list of 30. You choose 2 colleges to write about in your assessment, and there are 5 questions that are to be answered by both schools that you choose to write about. So now we can go to our first question, which is, what type of student might be happy and best served at this college or university? And the next slide will show you an example of a response about Lynn University. So as you can see, this is a very wordy response, but what we really are looking for is, what type of student would you want to recommend Lynn University to? And among the things that are important to know and to demonstrate is that Lynn is a school that has lots of support for students who might be a little bit of a late bloomer. So students who really want to go to college but are going to need academic support, Lynn could be a good choice for them. Additionally, students who need learning disability support through the Institute for Achievement and Learning. This is another type of student who could do well there. Students who are interested in music at the conservatory level can be well prepared there. And international students as well are a good choice for kids, for suggesting Lynn University to those students. The second question is, what are the standout features or the attributes of the college or university? What are the things that you think of when you think of a school? For example, Muhlenberg College, which is our next slide. And at Muhlenberg, one of the standouts that most of us think about when we have a student who's interested in performing arts or business or pre-health professions or communications could easily be Muhlenberg, particularly for students who want a small environment and access to a major city. So there are overlaps. Keep in mind that some of these overlaps are what other consultants have used for a host of reasons. Here, BU and Emerson is an overlap for Muhlenberg students who might want to go to Broadway. So this is another acceptable, good way of highlighting the standout features of a university or a college. Our third question is, describe the physical plant and the influences of the surrounding communities on the college or university environment. And our next sample response is Indiana University. Indiana is a school that is very involved with the town of Bloomington. In many ways, Bloomington is Indiana University. It's a beautiful campus in a beautiful community where there is a lot of interaction between the town and the school, where the school is known as a very friendly, warm campus. For kids who want a large university, this could be an interesting option, particularly excuse me, for those students who want to stay in the Midwest area but not deal with the harsh winters of schools perhaps in Illinois or even in Ohio. This is a very nice option for those students. And the fourth question, we ask about admission criteria. We're not asking for specific numbers. Please know that, that we're asking for generalities. What are the general parameters of students you would refer to this university? You do not need to memorize SAT or ACT scores, but having an idea of a range and what the academic requirements are for a school is very helpful. So our next sample response for the College of New Jersey will give exactly that type of information. The TCNJ is looking for students who are mostly A and B students. They have ACT scores in the range of 28 to 32. Engineering, we know, almost always has a slightly higher range that they require. Students who want to experience D3 sports, this is also a very good suggestion, but knowing that that's available is what we are really looking for. And again, students who are interested in specific majors such as engineering, business, nursing, sciences, this is what we're looking for. What are the academic requirements? What are the ranges? And again, always in the back of our minds, and whenever any of us is looking for a good fit for a student, we're always thinking about the other questions that we had discussed. What type of school, what size school, what location is the school? And this particular question is just asking for general admissions requirement information. And the final question in the institutional knowledge section is, please give us 2 or 3 examples of similar colleges and describe why you feel they are similar. So to that end, we have 2 examples. The first one is Tulane. Similar schools or overlaps, next slide please. Similar schools or overlaps to Tulane could include the University of Miami in terms of size, program offerings, the climate, the academic level of students at the school. LSU for the location only and their programs. It's a much larger school, but it could be an option for students who really want that kind of college experience. Emory and Vanderbilt could also be on that list, even though the academic expectation might be higher and more demanding, but you know, we don't want to limit students' opportunities just, you know, so that everything is exactly the same. We do want ourselves to stretch. We want our students to stretch. This is a good understanding, a good example of why Tulane is a comparable or is an overlap for these 4 schools. Another school that is totally different than Tulane is Muhlenberg. And those overlaps could include Lafayette because of the size and the location, and again, the type of school and majors that are offered there. Dickinson and Gettysburg because of the athletic opportunities that are there. Susquehanna, again, because of location, size, and liberal arts, but Susquehanna is a more rural environment as opposed to Muhlenberg, which is a suburban environment. You add to that, excuse me, Bucknell and Villanova, which could be considered overlaps because some of the programs that they have, such as the business school, the size, and the availability of opportunities there. And this candidate included as an overlap for Muhlenberg, as you can see, BU, Emerson, Fordham, Ithaca, and Elon. All of them very different, but possible schools for students to explore if they are interested in performing arts. So, some of the comments that we read from evaluators who are assessing the assessment is this. I'm going to read this word for word. This candidate does a good job of offering similarities on the basis of several factors, including the always elusive vibe. In general, I appreciate when someone has considered several factors instead of honing in on just one element of similarity. It's no better than her choices, but I wonder if F&M as a similar school to Muhlenberg could have been added.
Excuse me, Rachel. Someone asked, could you please repeat the third question for the institutional knowledge section?
Of course, absolutely. The third question is to describe the physical plant and the influences of the surrounding communities on the college or university environment. Let me just say that you don't need to be taking copious notes. This entire webinar is going to be available on our website. It'll take a little bit of time to post it, but you know, for those of you who are trying to really write down everything that we're saying, you don't need to do that. So.
Yeah. And that's a very good point, Rachel. Also, using the question and answer box, as Debbie did, is very helpful. If you have questions, we will have time at the end of the presentation as well to take questions. Using the question box much easier than using the chat box.
Okay. We will continue to answer questions in the Q&A box as we move through this webinar. But at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Steve, who's going to discuss the professional knowledge piece of the assessment.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I certainly hope that you all take very copious notes about my section. Just kidding. All of this is being recorded. The questions on the institutional knowledge section are on our website and not necessary. Let me just take a moment to say that I really appreciate all of you being here today, and all of you that are going to be listening to this in subsequent days. I've spent a great deal of time with credentialing over the years because I have always felt, even before Varsity Blues, that we ought to demonstrate our level of professionalism. And there are many ways to demonstrate that. One of the ways, and we've worked hard to create this, is through a assessment and through a certified educational planner program. I want to say that we are always looking to be fair and looking to be transparent. And any part of this process that you feel we're not being fair or we're not being transparent, please let us know, because that's our goal. I'm glad to talk about the professional knowledge section because professional knowledge is, after all, what each of us do each day. And on the assessment, you have a chance to demonstrate that you know the importance of the match process and that you can take a short case study and not very much information. They're really more of vignettes than case studies, but that you can take that and find good match colleges. And as important, that you can explain a logical, straightforward counseling strategy. That's what is important. Let's look at a sample case. The next slide, please. So here's a case of Oliver Sacks. And we are using college examples and cases for this webinar, but we also have cases for those who are doing boarding schools or day schools or therapeutic programs or whatever. So the case of Oliver Sacks, you can read through it. You'll see that this is a young man who's coming to you for help. That he has about a 3.3 GPA. You'll read about his SATs. You'll read about several things about Ollie that he sort of. You've heard that he kind of does the minimum to get by. The next slide is the end of the case. You'll see two more paragraphs there. The first paragraph has a little bit about what he is looking for in a college. You'll see some things about his mom and his dad's involvement. You'll see in the last paragraph, when you have a chance to read through it, that he's presented some factors that he is looking for in terms of finding a good match college. The next slide, please. Before talking about the three questions, I want to give you a tip, and I believe that this tip is going to make the price of attending this webinar really worthwhile. And the tip is that for each case, think about three things with the candidate. Number one, what is the student like without regard to the grades and test scores? Now, we know how important grades and test scores are, but we want first to get a feel for who this person is. And for this assessment, that's a very important component. So you will see later, when you have a chance to read all these cases, that he's energetic, that he's eager for help in the process, that he's likable, that he's not always motivated, that some people have reported that he does the minimum to get by, that he's a great athlete. So first, what is he like just with him as a person? Secondly, admission matters. So looking at, obviously, his GPA, his test scores. Some of the cases have a little bit more information, some of them have a little bit less. And the third piece of that is, what is he looking for? What are the factors that are important? In this case, again, you'll read that a small to medium size he feels would be good, east or west. He'd like to participate and be able to watch sports, that there be a balance between academic and social, preppy, prestigious, although, as we all know, prestige is in the eye of the beholder, but that's a part of the case here. So question one, what general characteristics would you be looking for in colleges for this student? And that's where the things that I've just talked about, you can talk about. You can talk about what he's like. You can talk about what the criteria that he's looking for. A little bit of an overview from you. Next slide, please. You'll see the second question suggests 3 to 5 specific college recommendations appropriate for this student. Now, so what you see there on the slide, what is a good fit? What is the connection between Ollie and the colleges you're suggesting? Because he may not be so motivated, maybe a place that has a little bit more scaffolding and a little bit more opportunities for support. He's interested in sports, so a place where both in terms of participating and being a spectator, that you can be involved. In the next slide, you will see that this candidate suggested that Denison might be a good choice for him, and you'll see the rationale that the candidate gave for Denison. Another candidate thought Marist would be good, and again you will see the connection between the candidate's needs and the feeling on the part of the CEP candidate. The next slide, please, shows that someone else suggested Syracuse. Now, they point out that this is not perhaps an ideal location because it's a larger size than he wants. On the other hand, the candidate has provided certain reasons why this would be a good choice. Let me say at this point, are these the only options for this student? Of course not. Remember also that these are your work will be read by peers. They will not be looking for problems. They'll be looking for ways that you are demonstrating that you understand the basics of the case, and that you have a educationally sound procedure for dealing with those issues. Are there inappropriate cases? Sure. Inappropriate colleges? Yeah, probably so, both in terms of getting in and in terms of fitting in. But again, we are looking for a rationale. We are looking for a way that you are telling us that you have a sound approach to dealing with the cases that you get. And the next slide has the third question, which is list any other points that should possibly be considered in working with this student. And as you'll read later, this is an opportunity for you to pull out any part of the case that you feel you would want to pay attention to. For example, in this case, you have a father who thinks that this student ought to be going to the most competitive colleges of the country. So an approach could be to meet with him to talk about how admissions has changed over the years. There are cases where students are very frightened about going off to college. They may be the first generation to go to college. You might suggest that at Christmas break, that a student that you worked with the year before ought to you ought to connect the two so that could be helped. If there are issues, if there are things that you feel you would do to create an environment where you're giving priority to the best principles of good college counseling, this is your opportunity for that. In the next slide, please, you will see that one person who was responding to the case of Oliver Sacks had these questions. Why is Ollie doing the minimum? And has Ollie considered any majors? There are people who administer career inventories that may be helpful if a major isn't specific in the case. And you'll see two other questions. The next slide shows you how we look at the responses to the professional knowledge section. The highest rating is given, and the words we use for that highest rating, as you see there, is the candidate demonstrates a clear understanding of the most appropriate choices and an excellent rationale. On the other side of that continuum, inappropriate choices and unacceptable rationale. Again, our goal is transparency. Our goal is fairness. We all have different, we live in different parts of the country and of the world. We understand that we're looking for someone who can take this information and can present it. And it's something that I think everyone who has done this work for a few years is able to do. The next slide is some comments from our evaluation team. I particularly like the questions asked in response to number 3. It's encouraging that the candidate is developing educational and developmental issues. Next slide, please. You'll see that one of our evaluators said the student's maturity is an issue. Just bringing up maturity is something that's a positive in this section. We're looking for, and you'll see that the idea of at least asking about a gap year is good. This is the section that provides you an opportunity to show what you know. You don't have to memorize colleges. You just have to be aware enough of options so that you can look at a case and respond in a educationally sound way. I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Stacy, who is going to talk a little bit about the study tips, and I just want to thank Stacy. She went above and beyond what we expected to do some research, and she's going to share that with you. So, Stacy.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Next slide. So, how do I prepare? The AICEP website has slides and tips, and in fact, we made a document that had a lot of tips from other CEPs, and that is up on the website now. And you'll also be getting a link to that as well. One thing about how about preparing that I think is really important to know is that everyone is going to be different. Everyone has a different learning style. Everyone responds differently to different ways of learning. And so the approach that I talk about here is my approach, and it is not necessarily the approach that will work for you. Like I said, on the website, there is a document that has lots of different approaches, so you can get lots of different ideas about that. Thank you. So this was my approach. I want to say that I actually started with an Excel spreadsheet and thought that that's how I was going to do things. And I, after about a day or two of that, realized that that was not going to be my approach. It was not going to work for me. And I wanted to go back to flashcards, which, you know, I used all through high school and college. So I went out and got 5x7 flashcards, which are pretty big. I used one card for each question for each school. So 30 schools, 5 questions. I ended up with 150 flashcards. After about a week of creating these flashcards, I realized I was not even halfway through, and I started to panic. I had started the process about 8 weeks before I took my exam, partly because I'm a planner. I knew I had some busy times coming up, and I really wanted to get started. And I started to panic because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to finish this. But what I realized is that the act of making the cards was actually studying for me. I really tried to focus on what I already knew. And I wrote down on my flashcard everything that I knew in that area. And then I filled in by using the resources that I typically use, Fisk Guide Score, Wintergreen Orchard House, etc. And you'll use your own resources that you like to use. So I ended up having enough time. Once I created the cards, I did go through them and I sorted them into 2 piles, the I'm good and the work on it pile. And my work on it pile was actually much smaller than my I'm good pile, and that gave me a lot of confidence. I made my daughters test me, which was a lot of fun. They were not excited about that, but it happened. And slowly I kind of whittled down my work on it pile, which was really great. I guess next slide, please. So these are just some pictures of my cards. I wrote stuff, I crossed stuff out. I also at some point went through and highlighted bits that were harder for me to remember that I really wanted to have on there. I will say that all of this was a lot of work, but it was work that I made for myself. And I think that that it's just my style, that I always want to over prepare. I always want to come in with more than I think I need. And so this is how I approached it. I will also tell you that this was all for the institutional knowledge section. The professional knowledge section, I did not study for at all, because I felt that my 14 years of being a college counselor was the studying that I needed. That's what I do. You know, I sit down, I look at a case, and I say, I meet a person, and I figure out what to do with them. So I just didn't feel like I needed to study for that. But what I did do was I kept reminding myself to explain my answers for each section. And that was, I think, the biggest part, was always remembering to explain things. Next slide. So this is some other CEPs, you know, their study methods. And like I said, on our website, there is a document that has a much more in-depth approach, you know, that gives you much more in-depth approaches to lots of different ways of studying. And the only other thing that I'm going to say about this is that the commissioners are really, really helpful. Whoever is assigned to you, you know, my commissioners, who happen to be Steve and Rachel, were really wonderful about answering my questions. You know, I checked in with Steve and said, this is what I'm thinking about for this question, for this school. Am I on the right track? He assured me that I was, and that was really helpful to me. And then the final thing that I'm going to say is just that if you get to the assessment, it's because the commissioners have reviewed your application, which is very extensive. They believe in you and believe that you have the experience and the expertise to pass the assessment, and you will. So, next slide. So I'm going to turn it back to Rachel.
Thanks so much, Stacy. We are very eager to have you take the CEP exam because, as Stacy said, we really are available. The entire commission is really available to help you become as comfortable as you can with taking this assessment. I will tell you that when I took my assessment, I, like many people, felt very uncomfortable taking an exam. I felt that once I had defended my dissertation, those days were in the rearview mirror, and here I am facing needing to take this because I really felt that this is the highest credential that our profession allows at this time. So I felt very strongly that it was an important thing for me to do. It was equally important to the profession moving forward so that we would have people who are not the Rick Singers of the world practicing and using the same professional recognition that we have. So to that end, I did take my assessment. I was prepared, and I must say, I really enjoyed the process, simply because it showed me what I know. As Stacy said, the institutional knowledge is information that we can easily study for and be surprised at how much we do know. The professional knowledge we do on a daily basis. As Steve said, we want to be as transparent as possible. So anything that any one of the commissioners can do to help you become comfortable with taking this assessment, we are very happy to do. But the assessment is only part one of this process. The second part that is equally important is the recertification piece. All CEPs are required to recertify every 5 years. There is a fee that goes along with that, which is $75 that we pay every year to maintain our CEP. But in that 5th year, when we are required to recertify, that fee is $100 and I believe, correct me if I am wrong, but I believe that that fee will cover year number 5 of your annual fee.
That is correct, Rachel.
Okay, thanks, Ann. There are documents that are required. They too are available on the website. but there is an application for recertification with copies of an affirmation and a certification form. What is required is that we visit colleges, schools, programs, whatever our area of expertise is. We must visit at least 75 within that 5-year period. We are also required to reach 75 hours of professional training. Many of us attend a multitude of conferences every year, and when you multiply that by 5 years, you can easily hit 75 hours in that regard. However, 35 hours is the maximum that we are allowed by doing workshops, conferences, webinars like this, any institutes that we might have done. The other hours really do need to be boots on the ground hours, visiting programs, colleges, and schools. So I know it's looking down the road for many of you, but I want you to understand how important recertifying is. I also want you to be aware that when CEPs do not recertify, they become deactivated. They will lose their certification within the AICEP. So, and again, if there are questions about that, we're happy to answer them at any time, whether it's prior to taking your assessment or just prior to your recertification date. And now we are going to open up to any questions that may have come in. Anne?
The first question is, curious why financial fit is not a component of right fit for this student. Does the CEP assessment not take finances into account? Would someone like to answer that?
Well, I can take part of that. I think that financial fit is covered, and that comes into the additional part. So when you're looking at the case studies for a student, you're able to, you saw some of the comments that said, I'm assuming the student is a full pay, or if financial fit is a component of what you incorporate in as you work with your students, that can be part of the questions that you bring up and the issues that you discuss in your case study. So, and there are several different case studies, and some will say that the family's looking for an affordable option, or that might be stated or implied. So it may not be an overt or direct aspect of every case study, but it certainly can be incorporated into your treatment of the case. So Rachel or Steve, would you have anything else to add to that? Or Stacy?
The only thing I would add to that is, as Cindy alluded, not every case is going to specify financial fit. However, as all of us who do this work on a daily basis are always thinking about that when we're working with clients. So to that end, if you receive a case study that does not specify financial fit, right into the body of your assessment, I am assuming that this is a full pay student. I'm assuming that financial need needs to be considered. Whatever the assumption is that you're making, state it and then substantiate it, and that is fine.
And just one thing to add, we work hard to create these cases, and we eliminate cases that are not effective, but there are certainly many cases with financial need, with questions of affordability. There are some cases of first generation students. There are some cases where there's a little bit more certainty about major or career. What we like to say is that our cases are mainstream, meaning that in general, we're not trying to force candidates to, to think about, whether there are robotics programs in Idaho or something like that. So if there's financial need, it's never to the point where, there wouldn't be any options other than maybe regional schools or schools that are particularly generous. So we try to make the cases as mainstream as we can.
Okay, the next question is, what is the SCOIR?
So I'll answer that question since that was on my slide. SCORE, it's pronounced SCORE, and it is an alternative to Naviance that was developed by some folks in Westchester, Pennsylvania. So it's mostly being used by schools, but individuals can, if you go to score.com, you can sign up for an individual account, and they have a nice search engine on there. So I use it as an alternative to like Big Future, which college, there's the College Board website. I like to use SCORE instead.
Okay, the next question is, can you give more examples of non-workshop style professional development?
I'm going to jump in here on this one too, because I just was entering my recertification stuff. And so I presented at Drexel University. I did a staff admissions retreat presentation for them, and that went in. There are all kinds of things I think that we do, and they come up in different categories in addition to the site visits and the webinars and the conferences that you attend. Classes that you take, if you do anything for UCLA or UC Irvine or anything like that, those classes can go in there as well. And I also did a training recently, a QPR training on suicide prevention, and I put that in there as well. I'm sure Rachel and Steve have other answers as well.
The other thing I would add are any articles or publications that you might write, if it's for a professional community or for parents or a lay community. All of that gets included in those hours.
Oh, and volunteer service in your regional ACAC or with NACAC or with HECA or IECA, any kind of, or foundation, if you volunteer with the foundation and you do application reading, any kind of volunteer service that's related to the profession also.
Any attendance of any program, if you go to a Colleges That Change Lives program, if there's a alumni college that you're learning about students, if there are, what we're looking for is just engagement, that you are engaged to continue to learn, continue to find new approaches to working with students, find out new things about schools. So we are pretty we're pretty open to accepting a wide range of those types of experiences.
The next question is, do you remind students to recertify? And I will answer this one. At 6 months, 2 months, and 1 month prior to your recertification date, I will send you an email reminder. Okay, and the next question is the assessment conducted in a certain location?
When you talk to one of us after you have been approved to take the assessment, we will talk about the options that are open to you in terms of taking the test. We will work with you to try to see if we can find someone in your region that we can ask to proctor your test.
Thank you. The next question is the test computer-based or written?
You do the test on your laptop, and the candidates are instructed to bring the laptop, whether it's to the conference or to a proctor's office. You do it on a word processing document. You don't put your name anywhere on the document. You'll be given a series of letters and numbers. So you type in your responses.
The next question is, will the CEP assessment be offered this summer at the International ACAC Conference in London, Ontario, in Canada?
The answer is we don't know. If what would happen is if we had someone that was approved who was going to be at that conference, and if we had a CEP or someone from the commission that was going to be at the conference, we'd make it possible for you to do it there. Sometimes we have the ability to do that, and sometimes we don't.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is, I hold a master's degree in education and higher ed for the last 10 years and have been advising privately during this time. I have never worked for an institution of higher ed. Does this matter?
There's no requirement that you need to be working for an institution of higher education.
Okay, great. Let's see, the next question is, how can international, especially non-school-based or non-international school-based counselors, basically those with less financial support, meet the 75 site visit requirement?
In order to be current as an educational consultant, we assume that you're doing that anyway, so that you will be able to advise your students in real time, so to speak. So it should just be, it's not that you need, we don't give you the 75 or the hours can be met in a variety of ways. And as we said, we expect and that you will visit some programs, but not 75, I'm sorry, 75 over the 5 years, yes. But the 75 hours are professional development hours. Did I say that clearly?
I think they're asking about site visits, the 75 site visit requirement.
I'd like to jump in briefly and just say that that I know that there's a certain percentage of the site visits that can be met with other kinds of experiences. So if there's if there's a rep that comes to your area and you meet with the rep and sit with them and get an update, that I think 5 of those counts as one visit. And then there's a certain number of, I think you can do like 25 of those to count for 5 visits of your 75. So, and I might not have the numbers exactly right, but some of your, some of those site visits can be taken care of that way, but there is an expectation that you're going to, over the course of 5 years, figure out how to get yourself to schools. And some of those may be internet schools in your countries. They don't all have to be in the US. They can be in a variety of places. So we hope you can do that.
Thank you, Stacy.
Okay. Let's see. The next question is 75 hours of professional training, of which 35 can be conferences and conference classes, etc. I assume that Myers-Briggs training could be another example of something that would satisfy the additional 40-hour requirement. Is there a list of what else constitutes professional training so there is less ambiguity?
Well, certainly Myers-Briggs training would count, and you know that's a good suggestion. That maybe we do need a listing. There's just so many ways to learn, but it's a good idea, and we'll talk about it.
But also on the website, there are different categories that are listed for recertification, and in each category, lots of examples are given. And so when I went in, I found it very clear, what I could use. It seemed, I think there's a lot of clarity if you look at the website.
Thank you. Let's see, the next question is, in regards to the recertification hours, do you need to have hours in each category?
You don't have to have hours in every category. There are many people that haven't presented or haven't written. You just have to have the total of 75, of which, as Rachel said, 30, what is it, 35? 35 are in conference attendance.
Conferences or webinars.
Yeah.
Or workshops.
Right.
Okay, the next question is, on the recertification, do we need to get actual proof, as in signed off documentation that verifies we attended conferences, etc., similar to ECE units in the teaching profession, or is this on the honor system?
It's a combination. At the end of every conference, actually at the beginning, there is a CEU form that is offered, and you identify which sessions you've attended and how many hours you've spent in those sessions. That gets turned into the conference organizer, whether it's IECA or HEPA or anything else. They will then verify that you attended that and will send you, they'll give you a certification sheet as well. And you can just use that as part of your application for recertification.
I'd like to add to that. Right now, there are some conferences that issue CEU forms like this. Others do not. We're in the process of developing our own form for you to track your professional development hours. If you attend a conference where there's a commissioner in attendance, you can ask them to sign that. You can also provide documentation such as photocopies of a conference program and with sessions indicated which you attended. So there's lots of different ways to document this. So anyway, the next question is, would Chamber of Commerce business events count for professional development?
Chamber of Commerce business events?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think for an independent consultant, I mean, we're running a business, and certainly I would think that at least some of the hours could be in that category. The same could be said for like IECA's professional retreat, which is basically a business-oriented program.
Okay. Another question is, and this is the last question, there seems to be slightly competing guidance on where one can go for the CEP. Is the guidance a minimum of 3 years of active IEC experience with perhaps prior professional work, or is it 5 years of active IEC, being an active IEC, I guess?
There is no automatic cutoffs of any sort. What you will read on our website are some general guidelines of people that have typically been approved. If you have questions about your candidacy, please send them to us. If you've done 2 years of independent consulting, but then many years of, school counseling or some other related experience, that's very different than, if you work in an industry that was totally unrelated to this. So we do want to provide the kind of guidance that you will find on our website, but ask if you have any questions.
Great. Well, there are other questions that we did not get to, but we will ask the commissioners who are available to answer these questions, and we will post the questions and the answers on our blog in a few days after the webinar. So at this time, thank you all very much for attending this morning. And we hope that it answered some of your questions. If you have more questions, please email me at info@aicep.org, and I'll be happy to either answer them or ask someone else to answer them. After the recording is available in a couple of days, I will be sending out an email to folks to let them know that the recording is available for you to view again if you would like, and also to provide a link to Stacy's documentation on helpful ways to study for the assessment. And also we do have a recording of a previous webinar that we conducted kind of on the general CEP process from April. So if you have any questions, please contact us. But thank you so much, everyone who participated today, and thank you all for attending. Send me your questions if you have any. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.